Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships, and situations that we find irritating, difficult, or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded. If you get a chance, check them out at www.zenminded.uk. You'll find a curated selection of Japanese homeware and incense, a perfect match to your meditation practice. We're also sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers convenient and affordable therapy online. In my opinion, meditation and psychotherapy both offer valuable avenues for exploring our suffering, habits, and stuck areas. A while back I spent 3.5 years meeting twice a week with a psychotherapist when things had become acute, and it felt like the help he gave me was really transformational, especially when supported by my regular meditation practice. If you're interested, they've extended an offer of 10% off your first month of therapy at betterhelp.com/zen at the sharp end. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/zen at the sharp end. In this podcast, I'm talking to Charlie Morley, a best-selling author and teacher of lucid dreaming, shadow integration, and the mindfulness of dream and sleep. Here, Charlie discusses in depth the encounters he's had with the most difficult person in his life, himself. In a lucid dream, he explains, you literally meet personified versions of your own psychological states, and the negative, the wounded, the suffering aspects are known as your shadow self. The lucid dreaming practice he teaches takes a view that meeting these so-called demons offers you the opportunity for transforming them, turning them into helpers or angels. We can then learn to face our deepest pain demons in the dream state and come to terms with them, to hug them, and eventually let ourselves be eaten by them. And this lays down the neural pathways that help us do that in waking life, to deal with our daily life troublesome Buddhas. Welcome, Charlie, to the podcast, Zen at the Sharp End. I'm so glad we could find some time to chat.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you maybe start us off by telling us a little bit about, your background in practice, how you came to, do all the amazing stuff that you do with all your lucid dream and things, and then just kind of a little bit about your journey, just kind of briefly, your journey. Yeah.
Sure. My way into Dharma actually was kind of through martial arts and hip hop. I remember being about 15 years old and I was listening to a lot of this hip hop group called Wu-Tang Clan, who often used, before they did their raps, they had what I thought were Buddhist quotes. In fact, they weren't Buddhist quotes, they were Taoist quotes, but I didn't know that. I thought it was Buddhist quotes. So suddenly I was like, oh wow, these cool rappers think Buddhism is good, or maybe they're even into Buddhism. And at the same time, I had seen in London this show of the Shaolin monks performing in a theatre, doing one finger press ups and amazing kicks and stuff. And I thought, wow, they're Buddhists too. So suddenly around 15, Buddhism became kind of socially acceptable. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then when I was 16, I got a book called The Art of Happiness, which is like a discussion with the Dalai Lama and a journalist, I believe. Still one of the best books I recommend to people wanting a kind of an intro to Tibetan Buddhism. And I remember I bought that book at Heathrow Airport before a family holiday, long flight to Singapore. And the kind of myth I tell myself, by the end of that flight, I'd become a Buddhist. I don't know if it was that direct, but I do remember reading the book on the flight, kind of back to back. And I just kept on going, yeah, I think that. Oh yeah, I think that. That's right. Just all these kind of confirmations. And when I did land in Singapore, I don't know if I felt differently, but I was starting to see things a bit differently. In fact, so much so that I was pretty sure that I was going to get really into Buddhism. I just had this feeling. I was like, wow, I'm going to get really into this. And I mean, this is the logic of a teenager, right? Because I thought I was going to get so into Buddhism, I remember clearly like making this agreement with myself. I went, well, you're not allowed to do drugs in Buddhism and, have crazy sex and do all the kind of wild rock and roll stuff. So from now until I leave college, so for the next 2 years, from 16, 17, 18, 16 to 18, I will just really engage that, and I'll party and I'll do drugs and I'll go crazy and have loads of sex. I don't think the sex thing quite worked out, but that was my plan.
Yeah.
And I said, in the day that I leave college, I'm going to shave my head, I'm going to become a vegetarian, and I'm going to start going to the Buddhist center.
Mm.
And I did do that the day I left college. I remember we had our final day at college, and I had long hair, had a long ponytail, and I cut it off and then shaved my head, and I tried to go vegetarian. I remember my mum going, "What are you supposed to eat?"
Yeah.
I tried to go veggie, and I did start going to the Buddhist center. And then by the time I was 19, I'd taken refuge with Akon Rinpoche in the Tibetan Buddhist Karma Kagyu tradition. And then I started going to Kagyu Samazon, and eventually I met Rob Nairn, as well as Akon Rinpoche's brother, Lama Yeshe Rimpoche, who would then become my teacher. Because many things. One of the reasons being that Lama Yeshe's specialties of the Bardo practice is death and dream. And that's what I'd always been interested in. Right from the beginning of the journey, I'd been really interested in dreaming because I had a lucid dreaming practice, and I'd been into that even before I got into Buddhism.
So you had a lucid dreaming practice in your teenage years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, from about 15, 16.
That just happened spontaneously, was it?
No, it's actually a little bit earlier than that. I remember for my 12th birthday, so when I was 11, I asked for something called a Nova Dreamer, which is this like electronic sleep mask that you strap to your face, and it recognizes rapid eye movement and then flashes these lights. And you just dream of traffic lights for the first couple of weeks. Then eventually you're like, traffic lights, oh, that must be the flashing lights coming through my eyelids. I must, that's the mask. I must be dreaming. And they do work. I've had played with them a lot in the last 20 years. So I asked for one of those for my 12th birthday. My dad kind of confirmed that wasn't a false memory. And he said, yeah, and it was about 300 quid. So I'd never bought it for you. And I was like, yeah, I do remember that too. So yeah, when I was 12, I knew what lucid dreaming was. And I remember I was having them, and I wanted this mask because you could have them more easily. But then the memory becomes blurry. But really the next time I know I got into it was when I was 16. And I bought this book, Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming by Stephen LaBerge, and just followed the techniques and started having lucid dreams. But as I said before, that was this period, 16 to 18, when I was not doing any Dharma practice. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Yeah. So I was just using the lucid dream for sexual fantasy, to practice skateboarding. Just hedonism, But the other thing I was interested in was death. And actually, the drug stuff reached a peak when I had a very unfortunate kind of overdose experience and had a classic near-death experience. Really textbook, tunnel of light, life flashing before my eyes. It wasn't in images, though. It was like in photos. The tunnel was lined with framed photos. And I remember whizzing down it, disembodied. I had no body, just point of awareness. And I noticed, oh, those photos are me. And then I remember noticing, oh, they're me as a child. Oh, look, I'm getting younger. I'm getting younger. Then I saw photos of me as a baby. My last thought is one of the most scary thoughts I've ever had. I remember clearly thinking, what comes before baby? And then boom, everything black. Well, not blacked out. I entered into this like infinite space of blackness. But not blackness like lack of light. It was just like, that's all there was, like the infinite space. And then in that infinite space, I heard a voice, my voice, clearly my accent, my intonation, very totally neutral, just said, Charlie, do you want to live or do you want to die? And I was like, fuck, we get given a choice. Or in my head, in my belief system at 17, that's what happens when you die. You're given a choice. And I remember kind of yelling, but nothing came out because I don't have a body, but kind of yelling energetically, live. And then I kind of, my eyes open, there were people over me trying to wake me up. And apparently I'd kind of, I'd been in the state I thought I was, which was kind of dying or close to death.
So
So
this,
yeah, so from early on, had this real interest in death because of the near-death experience, and real interest in lucid dreaming.
yeah,
Then I meet this guy Lama Yeshe, who does the 49-day Bardo retreats in the dark and is a dream yoga master, and I was like, whoa, this is my dude.
yeah,
And then he started giving me the instructions, and by the time I got the instructions from him, I had read quite a few books. I'd really gone into lucid dreaming and some of the dream yoga stuff, but the first time, just the first sentence he gave me, in your next lucid dream, do X, do Y, do Z. It was like all the books counted for nothing.
ah,
Once there was this just one sentence of oral instruction. Um,
yeah,
yeah, so then started, having instruction from him. And then a few years later, he asked me to start running workshops alongside Rob Nairn, who was another student of his and brilliant meditation and lucid dream practitioner. And then, eventually started running workshops and then wrote books. And then I was living in the Buddhist center for 7 years. Um, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yes. I mean, what an amazing coming together of various different influences that sort of pointed the path very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking back on it now, it's like, oh, yeah, it was so destined. Not destined. It was so, uh, there was so many things pointing towards that way. Of
Yeah,
course, karma is the opposite of fate, right? It's you're creating your future in every
yeah,
word, every action, every thought. But there does seem that there were certain railway tracks laid down in
mm.
a certain direction, which luckily my train seemed to go on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so in all of that, then, um, do you remember when was the first time you got this sense of sometimes we encounter difficult people, difficult situations, and that can also be part of our practice. Like, do you
Mhm.
remember when that arose, or how that arose, or
Yeah, I mean, the first person I met that was a difficult person was me.
right?
My ego. That was the
Absolutely.
first thing I had to work with, and it
Mm.
was. And the reason I say it in that kind of dualistic way is because when you're in the lucid dream state, psychological concepts become personified. So you can be in a lucid dream with full awareness that you're everything, and yet there will be personifications of parts of you who will appear. And
Mm.
you can actually meet in the lucid dream your shadow, your ego, your fear, your anger. So it's like parts psychology, literally. You're literally engaging with parts of your psychology.
Mm.
So I think, uh, the first kind of person I encountered on the path who was creating barriers to my practice, who was giving me this chance to kind of transform that was me, was
And
myself.
what stage in that history that you were just talking about? When was that coming up then?
Very
Probably not when you were trying to fly around and meet girls. I mean,
No, it kind of was coming up then, because I mean, what was that? That was this. There was this habit. I maybe wouldn't call it an addiction, but there was a deep, habitual, like, obsession with sex that was coming
mm,
up in the dreams,
okay.
and I was feeding that. And I did notice that the more I did it, the shorter the lucid dreams became. Almost as if my mind was trying to kind of help me by pushing me out of the lucid dream before I could continue this kind of feeding this addiction or this
Uh,
obsession that was
I
happening.
see.
Um,
Mm.
and yet, when you're presented with something like that in the dream, you've got so much to work with. People often, the example I often give is, if you have a lucid dream that you're sunbathing on the beach, what can you do there? There's nothing to transform. There's no obstacles there's no demons that can be transformed into helpers and angels. You got nothing there. Whereas
Mm.
if you get lucid in, a zombie apocalypse or an addiction dream of sexual addiction or lust or whatever it is, there's so much to work with.
Ah.
As long as you can step back into witness and go, okay, these are wounded parts of myself. There are certain wounds which I have in my psyche, which are manifesting in this, in my teenage years, in this kind of obsessive quality towards sexuality. And they're manifesting in the lucid dream. Now, I have a chance to transform those. And if I can face and embrace them fully and completely and transform that which I thought was a demon into a helper or into an angel or whatever you want to think of it, there's work to be done. So really, I
Mm.
think the first kind of, uh, the first experience I had of being able to transform that which was an irritation into something on the path was, my own neuroses, my own obsessions when I met them in the lucid dream.
I mean, it's absolutely fascinating is that this is like a parallel experience in our lucid dreams to what we experience in our waking life. We meet people that are difficult, and they represent, they're difficult not because of who they are, but what they're jangling in us, or what they're grating on particularly. So I got like maybe two questions, or probably many more, but how do we recognize that? How do we step into that witness state? And then also, how do we transform those difficult people into angels?
So the witnessing state, I mean, you can have a lucid dream. You can be lucid in your dream, know that you're dreaming as you're dreaming, and still actually experience fear. Because although you know that you're dreaming, you haven't fully entered into what that means. That full, deep, non-preferential witnessing is that not only do you know that you're dreaming as you're dreaming, but you know that because I'm dreaming right now, everything is mind. My body's asleep in bed. I'm in a huge 3-dimensional projection of my own psychology, and everything is me. Like, that kind of contemplation needs to be done within the dream. And the first time you do it, it can be literally kind of step by step. You kind of, it's almost as if you're, not that you're talking yourself into it, but you are stating the truth of emptiness. I remember a teacher once saying about how good it is to recite the Heart Sutra. And he gave a lot of reasons why. But one of them was, he says, there's something about speaking the truth out loud that makes it manifest that much quicker. And I was like, that's interesting. So there's something about being in the lucid dream and kind of stating what is going on.
Yeah.
I know that I'm dreaming. Because I'm dreaming, everything is mind. Because everything is mind, there is no limitation. Everything is possible. Everything is empty of inherent existence. And because it's empty of inherent existence, everything has pure potentiality. And once you step into that idea of pure potentiality, all fear dissolves. I remember Alan Wallace once saying the term lucid nightmare is an oxymoron.
Yeah, I see.
Once you're fully lucid, how could it be a nightmare? It's simply a dream with, strong energy that is asking you to be afraid of it, or would in usual circumstances lead to fear. But with full witnessing lucidity, how can we be afraid? We can move towards it. We can see it energetically. So I think that's one of the things we can do. And what was the second part of the question?
So how do we transform what is a demon into an angel, a helping person?
Well, it's so good because the description I'm giving now, in a lucid dream, it's literal, but in the waking state, it becomes metaphorical. And the cool thing is, by doing these practices in the lucid dream, which are essentially facing and embracing the transform, we get into the habit that we do that more readily in the waking state. And we've actually got science on that. They show that in the lucid dream, you're creating these neural pathways, you're creating new habits of mind. So if you spend your lucid dreams embracing your demons, transforming monsters, or even beyond transforming, allowing the monster to eat you, knowing there's nothing to be eaten, there's, really dissolving ego into that, then that's creating a habit of mind that the next day when you're at work and your boss is giving you hell, or someone makes a nasty comment or something, rather than being triggered into reactivity, we're more likely to go, there's my monster. Now, can I embrace it and transform it? Or even, can I allow myself to be eaten by this comment? And really know that, this insulting comment they gave, who are they insulting? This body? I'm not this body. This self is an illusion. So when they say Charlie's an idiot or something like that, what part of me needs to be hurt by that? Really change it. I mean, I'm not there yet. Someone called me an idiot. Why am I an idiot? But, I see how it may play out. So in the lucid dream, it's very practical.
So it's like a sort of a place where we can really practice the art of dealing with difficult people and difficult things and difficult parts of ourselves.
Yeah, it's like a laboratory of enlightened action. So let's say I'm in the lucid dream and there's I once asked my teacher, Rob Nair, I said, how do I know what shadow content in my dream? And he went, lucid dream or non-lucid. And he went, you will be repelled and repulsed. It's like you won't want to go near it. The thought of going near it will scare you. It'll either be kind of sexually repulsive or aggressive, so you'll be scared of it, or disgusting. You won't go near it. It will repel and repulse you.
Yeah.
So when you become lucid, there's nothing quite more repellent or repulsive than a big monster running towards you, or a zombie or something like that. So it's very obvious, it's very kind of gross when the shadow appears. What's interesting is in the lucid dream, you can actually ask the shadow, what do you represent? And it will tell you. I mean, this is crazy. I've had shadows literally go, sexual wounding. And you're like, whoa, sexual wounding. This is an embodiment of sexual wounding, manifesting this kind of weird sexualized monster thing. And then you think, oh yeah, I guess why my mind has kind of drawn that. As if a therapist gave me a pen and paper and said, draw your sexual wounding, maybe I would draw something similar. Some sort of monster figure with strange sexualized aspects. So then you realize, like, wow, I'm kind of interacting with this wounded part of myself. And everything in you and everything we're taught in the movies is you should kill the monster, right? And you've got to just drop that and go, no, this is part of me. Violence has created this wound. Violence will not heal this wound. Only love will heal this wound. So then you go through this very strange process. And the first time you do it, everything in you is saying, don't do this, but literally hug the monster. And I mean, literally, not metaphorically, because you're in a world of metaphor. You're already in the lucid dream state. What could be more symbolic of integration, of love, of acceptance than the hug? So I tell people to literally physically hug these things that scare them in the lucid dream. And if not a physical hug, then kind of speak words of love towards them, acceptance, mantras, compassion mantras, whatever it is. But there's something about the physical hug that really seems to work very, very powerfully.
Right.
So literally kind of, hug your monsters, hug your demons. There is a step beyond that, which would be a very kind of high level practice, a higher level practice, but, absolutely doable for people if they feel ready to do so. Even in the act of hugging these monsters within our lucid dream, even though we acknowledge they're wounded parts of ourselves, we need to send them love. There's a subtle sense of avoidance. There's a subtle sense of, I'm hugging you, so you dissolve into light.
Like an intention. I want to get rid of you.
Yeah. Because when you hug the monster, basically, they usually turn into something. And it's so, this is where it's like Hollywood. It's just how Hollywood would show it. You kind of hug the demon and they dissolve into light. Or one time it dissolved into a baby. And I'm watching a baby in my arms. Another time it's like there's a human underneath there. So it's as if their costume falls off and there's a human. One time it was myself, hugging myself. Kind of obvious what's going on there. But there is still a subtle sense of, I'm hugging you, so you turn from monster to something nice.
Yeah, that's it. So that represents this sense in our practice. So like, actually, I've got a bit of suffering. If I do this, it's going to go away. And then there's this very subtle grasping about wanting something to change rather than fully accepting.
Absolutely. So it's still brilliant. It's still a massive practice. And people work with post-traumatic stress display and stuff like that. Doing a practice like that, embracing the attacker or something in these recurring nightmares where they're coming towards you, can be incredibly powerful and lead to complete cessation of nightmares very, very quickly. I'm just saying, for kind of a spiritual practitioner who wants to go one step beyond, would actually be, when you encounter the monster in the lucid dream, is just to allow it to eat you. Allow yourself to be devoured. Knowing that the self is illusory, your body is literally illusory in the lucid dream. Body's asleep in bed. This is an illusory body, illusory monster. Everything's you anyway. A real classic kind of or feeding your demons practice that can be done in the lucid dream. That's very, very intense when you do it, but that can lead to the highest level of integration.
Yeah, the full acceptance of everything and everyone and every part.
So there, I'm totally not there. But the thought of kind of embracing the monsters, you can't unknow that. So the next time, I don't know, you're queuing up for a coffee and someone pushes in front of you, and there's this kind of feeling of injustice. There's this feeling of like, why me? What's happened? Or someone insults you. You can't unknow what you've known in the lucid dream, which is that this is part of me. And violence created them. They're obviously wounded. That's why they're displaying these behaviors. So it's only love that can heal them. And it doesn't always work quite as literally in the lucid dream. And I'm not saying you hug the person who pushes in front of you in Starbucks, but just the kind of, you get that crucial quarter second between reacting and responding. And just to think, oh, wow, this person's insulted me. I'm really triggered right now. God, isn't it interesting how I can feel anger arising in me? Oh, I feel hot. I feel sweaty. Wow, fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And it can just buy you a little bit of time before you kind of, punch them in the face or whatever the reaction might be. And, sometimes it might literally be that you embrace them in real life in some cases, but probably not. It'll probably be more of an internal embrace of witnessing this person as someone who's wounded rather than someone who's there to hurt you. And that kind of shift can be really interesting.
Yeah, so it's like realizing that they've got their history and they may or may not be wounded or got their sort of stuff, but also you've got your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessarily in them that the issue is arising. It's in the space between. It's in
Mm-hmm.
the relationship. So I mean, you made a step. So we've got these experiences in our lucid dreams, and we meet parts of ourselves. And yes, okay, I've recognized that this monster is part of my traumatic past or whatever. Now I meet someone in waking life, and this is not me.
Mm.
How do I then make that step and recognize that this is actually, like I say, like in the relationship and part of me? That's quite a sort of
Mm.
jump. I mean, would you
It is
say?
a jump. And I wish that I had the same ability in the waking state as I do in the lucid dream state. I mean,
Yeah.
wow, in the lucid dream state, I have far more access to my Buddha nature than I seem to in the waking state. But on the few occasions where I have been able to bring something into the waking state, I think an idea that, okay, the person isn't me, but if they were me, how would I respond to them?
Mm.
I mean, this is something that happened to me recently, actually. So there was a incident of me being with my partner and her being kind of racially abused in the street by this seemingly kind of drunk guy.
Right.
And the initial thing is to protect her, and the sense of injustice and this anger came up. And then I just thought, kind of, okay, this guy isn't me, but if it was me, what would make me do such a thing? And the first thing was, well, if I was drunk. So is he drunk? And he was drunk, but he wasn't just drunk. It was clear that he had mental health issues.
Mm.
And everyone was kind of avoiding him. And by this time, he was standing in the road and just yelling at everyone, but particularly these kind of racial slurs towards my partner. And no one was going near him because it was a dangerous situation. And I did the opposite and walked straight up to him with hands low and in no sense kind of aggressively, and engaged him. Because I wasn't yelling, it was strange, because his energy was so high and yelling and aggressive that when I went in, just went, "You're right, mate." He couldn't yell back at that. There was
Yeah.
something in the kind of tone that it was, even though he was in this altered state, it was too incongruous to yell back. So I went, "Yeah, why?" And I was like, "Because you're making a bit of a racket, mate. And some of the stuff you're yelling, you can't be yelling that in public." And then, because that was a little bit too spiky for him, he went back, "You don't tell me what I can fucking..."
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Okay, well, look, why don't we get out the road and you can tell me what the problem is?" And then we kind of got out the road, and then his energy went down. I mean, it's a longer story, but the initial thing was to move towards that which scared me rather than to move away, was to move with, I often talk about this, default to benevolence, which is kind of like giving someone the benefit of the doubt. So just default to benevolence. Something's going on for this guy. And very quickly, after a couple of minutes of speaking by the road, so this time my partner's gone ahead with the dogs and I'm kind of back with him, he started to apologize. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I hear the voices. I hear the voices." And I'm like, okay, I hear the voices. So this guy's obviously working with some mental health issues. And then he starts to tell me that he's going home, and it's clear that he's in sheltered accommodation. So I'm like, okay, so the guy's maybe doesn't have a place to stay. He's obviously got mental health issues, and he's decided to get drunk on a Sunday afternoon, which might have exacerbated all these. Now, I'm not saying any of that validated or excused his behavior, but it helped to explain it and to speak to him as a human being rather than to look at him as literally a monster. I mean, he was in the middle of the road, cars were stopping, and just yelling racial abuse to my partner, yelling at everyone as they go past, everyone just keeping their distance because, big guy too.
So learning to lean in or move towards things that are initially repulsive in the dream state, that seems like a massive like learning point, right, that we can apply in all sorts of situations. Just the willingness to move towards things that are uncomfortable.
Precisely. Now, I can't say that it was the lucid dream training that made me feel so comfortable to move towards that potentially quite dangerous situation. But I know it didn't seem alien to me. It didn't seem alien. It seemed, and I didn't even think of it. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'd better be Buddhisty and go this guy.
Yeah, good
I was
Buddhist.
just like, God, this guy's suffering, man. And I mean, the thing you said there, you almost directly quoted one of the great female masters of the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, Machi Glabdron, who invented the Chu practice, the practice of cutting through, the practice that forms the basis of feeding your demons practice that Lama Alioni teaches. She says, go towards the places that scare you in order to find the Buddha within. And the way she describes demons in this feeding the demon practice, there's a kind of supposed to be a dialogue between her and her son. And her son's basically asking her, what do you mean, Mum, when you say you talk about demons? And she says, oh, son of noble family, when your mother talks of demons, she does not talk of black-fanged creatures who frighten all who look upon them. When your mother talks of demons, she talks of anything that prevents your experience of freedom. I thought, wow, this is 11th century Tibetan teaching. What a brilliant description for demons. And even now, the way we use it, oh man, I've got my demons of my past, or oh, the demons of alcoholism, oh God, the demons of my childhood trauma, whatever it is. We are actually kind of using it in that traditional Tibetan way, that these demons are anything that prevents our experience of freedom. And what prevents our experience of freedom more than trauma, than mental health issues, than addiction, than wounding? All these things are preventing us from experiencing the true freedom of oneness, the true freedom of that experience in lucid dream when you realize everything is me.
Of not being bound to wanting things to be different and doing nice things towards us, actually just allowing life to sort of flow easily.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a gazillion miles from that, but I get the theory of it.
Yeah.
And I see tiny baby steps towards it compared to how I used to interact with the world.
Well, I think that's a very inspirational way of putting it, because I mean, you've trodden the path for a long time and you're very deep in the practice. And I think, most people are listening who have issues around certain people, troublesome people, and working with just like life, really. It's like, yeah, we start off with tiny baby steps. That's the only thing we can do, right? We just start and intend.
Yeah.
And there's that, even the intention to move towards things that we feel difficult, to lean into our demons, even if we don't manage it, even if it's only just for like the easy ones. But like gradually we start a little bit more until we can allow them to eat us. And
Absolutely.
Maybe one day we can get there.
And the only thing I'd add to that, absolutely, these baby steps, is that we can make big steps if we go through lucid dreaming too. Because in the waking state, it's real baby steps. If you do it in the lucid dream, I mean, they refer to dream yoga practice as one of the quick paths to enlightenment. But I think if you can create that attitudinal change in your psychology and the literal change in your neural pathways by embracing scary things in the lucid dream, by transforming that which scares you into the lucid dream, by really moving towards those demons in the lucid dream, then those baby steps will be will move much quicker in the waking state, I think.
Yeah. So we move from seeing someone as a troublesome demon to literally seeing them as a troublesome Buddha. I mean, I really like that. That's a really nice connection. So, I mean, in the way that I describe it, a troublesome Buddha is someone who we find difficult, but is going to teach us. It's teaching us about who we are and how we are, because we react in a certain way and they trigger certain things about ourselves. And that we could see as a demon, or we can see them as a Buddha.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You remind me of something. My mum had Alzheimer's, and for 7 years I was with her on the path as she kind of slowly got worse and worse. And I actually can't remember who said it to me, but one of my teachers said, see your mum as the Buddha of forgetfulness. And I was like, oh, wow, that changes everything. She's the Buddha of forgetfulness. That rather than that irritation, there can be, another chance to practice patience. I was like, my patience is like the worst of the worst of my well, I have very few Bodhisattva qualities, but out of all of them, and patience being one, that's like the worst. I'm like, oh, that's the worst one for me. But wow, you be with your mum for 7 years with Alzheimer's, kind of muscles of patience build up. And that was a real gift she gave me. I have patience now, and I didn't used to have that. So really, her being the Buddha of forgetfulness gave me the gift of patience.
Absolutely. And that's such a lovely, again, a very inspirational example how a real life situation that's on the surface very hard
Yeah.
can be such a booster for allowing us to come into that place of compassion and kindness. And I mean, I'm guessing that a demon in the dream can become a bodhisattva in the dream.
I think probably it always was.
Or always was.
Yeah, I mean, we can't see it, right? But when people often say they often in their first few lucid dreams, I got lucid, but all these nightmarish things appeared. What went wrong? And I go, no, what went right? The fact that, every night your mind has been trying to communicate with you through non-lucid dreams. When you finally become lucid, that higher self, or the dreamer with a big D, as I call it, isn't gonna, is so excited. They're like, oh, whoa, really? You're really here. I can finally talk to you face to face. It's not going to be small talk. It's going to be after decades of trying to communicate with you. You're finally, okay, daddy issues, sexuality, trauma, past stuff. And it's a good sign. So I think they always were bodhisattvas. It's the Buddha nature presenting us with these demons to be transformed with, the no mud, no lotus. It gives us the mud, knowing that this is where the lotus flowers will grow from. So yeah, often kind of encountering those muddy things in the dream state is a blessing.
Oh, it's like a sandbox as well. Very nice. It's such a lovely way. Such a nice. I'm so glad we got to talk. So nice.
It's cool, isn't it? The lucid dream is such a good metaphor for discussing so much of spiritual practice, and of course, it is the core metaphor of Buddhism, right? Buddha, one who has awoken from the dream.
So that was going to be my last question. So we're experiencing the lucid dream. We realize everything is mind. Everything is flexible. We can do anything we want. Is that not what we awaken to in waking life?
Apparently. And not only that, it's so direct that it said, if you had a level of full awakening in everyday life, the same level of awakening that you can have in a lucid dream, you would also have the same abilities. And this explains a lot of the kind of mystical stuff about people being able to walk on water and walk through walls and fly through the sky. That's not random stuff. Those three things are exactly what you're told to practice in the ancient dream yoga teachings.
It's so interesting. Thank you so much for coming here and bringing all that amazing experience and your perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all meet difficult people, and each of those meetings presents an opportunity for learning and growth. I also have a downloadable video course in how to deal with difficult people. Head over to my website for more information, markwestmaquette.co.uk. Thanks for listening.